You can't just incorporate every new technology that comes around a bend into your intelligence apparatus. You have to be sure that you can trust it with your sensitive information. What's up, y'all? Dr. Mehdi here. Let's talk sec. Handling classified information is a huge responsibility of everybody in the federal government who has access to it. The federal government has been handling classified information for centuries, but as we entered the information age, it was inevitable that this classified information would become digital. Now, the U.S. government has to trust not only its human employees, but also its computer systems to handle this classified information appropriately. What did it take to make this transition? And what did the U.S. government need to be able to trust its computers? I'm kind of excited to talk about this. Remember, cybersecurity can be fun, and also, none of this will be on the test. So just a note here, a lot of the information in this video came from an interview with David Bell, conducted by Jeffrey R. Yost in 2012. See the info in the description for a link. So the year is about 1970, and I know we talked about this in a previous video. Multi-user, multi-program computer systems were on the horizon. The value of computer systems was inevitable at this point, was inarguable. They could think faster than humans. If the US government wasn't going to find a way to take advantage of this, they were quickly going to be left behind. However, you can't just incorporate every new technology that comes around a bend into your intelligence apparatus. You have to be sure that you can trust it with your sensitive information. If you want the Department of Defense to use this, whatever this technology is, you have to be sure that this technology is not going to leak your information and it can be used safely. So this was a problem. In the 1970s, we weren't sure yet how to use computer systems securely. We weren't sure if they could be trusted with our most sensitive information. So this was on the radar of the Department of Defense. It was actually the U.S. Air Force that stepped up and took the driver's seat on this problem. The Air Force wanted a more general model of computer security. The only problem was nobody really knew what that meant. Everyone at the time could argue and could point out flaws in the current computer systems, saying, oh, this is a vulnerability, I can bypass this security mechanism, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. What we really needed was a solid definition of what was right. Then, we could build our computer systems to make sure that they match that definition. So as usual, when the US military encounters a problem, they throw a lot of money at it. And as we know, bags of money attract boatloads of effort. You had computer scientists, mathematicians, physicists from all over the country throwing in their 2 cents. A lot of academic ink was spilled trying to get to the bottom of this problem. I know we spoke in a previous video linked right here on the Anderson Report, also known as the Computer Security Technology Planning Study. But what did the US government do with that report? Well, mathematician David Elliott Bell and computer scientist Leonard Bell-LaPadula. Okay, right before filming this video, I looked up how to pronounce his name. It seems like all the American security nerds who are producing content on this topic like to say
the Bell-LaPadula model.
Other people who have this name go by LaPadula. I've been saying LaPadula this whole time, so I'm just gonna say LaPadula. Anyway, David Elliott Bell and Leonard LaPadula were tasked by the US Air Force to take the conclusions from the Anderson Report and push them further. As we dig into these models, I want you to remember, every model is wrong, but that doesn't mean they're not useful. So when you're tasked with a problem in academia, and probably with life in general, but I don't know, my life's a mess, so don't listen to me on that. A good first step is to look around and see what other people have been saying about this problem. Maybe they've encountered this problem before. Maybe they've already done the research. Maybe there's stuff you can use. You can learn from other people's mistakes and successes. The main thing to take from here is, if you're stuck, try reading a little more. And so that's where Bell started. In his research, he found a lot of models for the existing computer systems at the time. One of them was the Adept 50. So I don't actually know what that is. I don't know. Anyway, he found security models for the Adept 50. But that is a very specific system. These models might have worked okay for that system. I don't know. I didn't actually do any research into them. I don't know what Bell thought of them. What I do know is that Bell thought that they were too specific. We were looking for a more general security model that would apply to a generic operating system. So Bell looked around at all the journal papers, all the conference proceedings. He talked to his colleagues in academia. He read the Anderson Report. He found that a lot of people were focused on this grand problem of cybersecurity. There were lots of areas to explore. There were lots of things to discuss, lots of little details. There were also a lot of disagreements on what actually mattered. Bell noticed a pattern in all the literature that he was reading. You say you're secure, but you didn't do X. What we wanted to do was say, as far as we're concerned, security is X, Y, and Z. And if somebody says, you didn't do W, we say, yes, we said that. We're only doing X, Y, and Z. And if you want to do W, then fine. Go ahead and do some W, but we're here for X, Y, and Z. So Bell thought that perhaps a good way to get started was to get everyone on the same page about what exactly we were doing. This might sound familiar if you saw my previous video on the CIA triad. Okay, so in order to understand what David Bell was onto, we need to talk about state machines. So state machines have been a staple in computer science and mathematics for decades, but they're still highly relevant today as some of us try to turn our JavaScript vomit into math that we can reason on. They also allow us to talk about what a secure system means without necessarily agreeing on what secure means. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but we'll get to it. So let's take a very simple example like a traffic light. So a traffic light, as you know, has 3 lights, red, yellow, and green. Every way that the lights can be on or off on a traffic light is a new state of the system. So for example, this is a state, this is a state, and this is a state. Whatever combination of lights being on or off is a new state in a traffic light. How many states are there? I don't know, too many to count. There could be trillions. We may never know. The important thing to keep in mind here is that there are only 4 safe states of a traffic light. Those states are green, yellow, red, and off. So here you have the states of the traffic light, but you also need rules for how the traffic light can transition from one state to another. If the traffic light, for example, is in the green state, it transitions from green to yellow and then from yellow to red. We do not transfer straight from green to red. Otherwise, you'll have people slamming on their brakes or charging through the intersection at full speed. You have that yellow state in between those so that people will know to slow down because a red light is coming. So it can help to model this as a state machine, like so. Boom. So each circle in this diagram is a state. Each arrow between the circles is a rule for how to transition from one state to the next. When you look at a system in this way as a state machine, you can start to reason about it and you can start to prove things about it. If all we want to do is prove that this system is safe, all we have to do is show that every state that the system could find itself in is a safe state. Easy peasy, easy peasy, easy peasy. So traffic light is relatively simple. Like there's not a ton of states here. We as human beings can look at the state machine, visit every single state, and reason about whether it's safe or not. But what about systems that are a little more complex? What about systems that may have hundreds of states or thousands of states, millions of states, billions of states? Well, in order to determine if those systems are safe, you click on a different video and have them explain it to you. Look, I'm kidding. Like the state explosion problem is really cool. There's a lot of cool ways to reduce the number of states in the system depending on what system you have. It's just out of scope for this particular video. My point here is that you can do this with security too, just like with safety. If you can visit every single state in your state machine and show that it is secure, then you can say that your system is secure. Once you do that, it only becomes a problem of defining what secure means to you. Alright, so in this interview, Bell talks about a problem that I'm sure we've all faced at some point in our life. He and LaPadula wanted to go from zero to hero. He wanted to push out some research that would take the community by storm. It makes sense, I relate to it a lot. You want to work on something groundbreaking. He and LaPadula had their initial preliminary research. He wanted the DoD to be amazed by it, to throw them a huge bag of cash so that they could just go sprint with it. This is some real fresh out of the academy, full of piss and vinegar bullshit. I'm not throwing shade here because no one will ever remember anything I've ever done longer than I will remember it. I'm just saying that the boss of the project, and his name was Roger Shell, offered a key insight, and that is that security levels, classification levels in real life, they don't really change. So once you're cleared for top secret, you don't really move up and down, back and forth from secret to top secret. The system relatively stays static. Sometimes, people move up in clearance, but it's extremely rare and difficult for someone to move down in clearance. So Roger Shell told them to just create a model that assumes everyone in the government stays at the same clearance level. Roger Shell gave us the direction to assume that nothing ever changed. So we were a little dumbfounded, and on the way back to the office, we were a little steamed, and we said, there's nothing interesting left. It's boring. There's nothing to be done. So we took what we had done and put it into volume 1. Just to make clear how annoyed we were, we called our result the basic security theorem. His spite is so relatable. Go off, King. So now we have a framework for proving that a system is secure. All we needed was a good definition for what secure meant. This is where Bell and LaPadula's basic security theorem comes in. Basic security theorem is pretty simple. It only has 3 rules. The first one is easy. It's called the simple security property. And this rule, put in plain English, is commonly called no read up. You don't want people lower on the security totem pole reading to a higher security level than they possess. Now this rule is super easy to understand, but it is not sufficient for protecting classified information. The next rule is called the star property. Now this one, in my opinion, is a little more geared towards the insider threat scenario. The general idea here, to put in that same plain English, is no write down. The simple security property that we talked about before prevents underlings from reading up. The star property prevents people with a higher clearance, like your generals or whatnot, from accidentally reading information from a higher clearance level and writing it down to a lower clearance level where other people at that lower clearance can read it. That is a breach of security. That is leaking information. The star property is designed to prevent that. Now, this rule doesn't really make any distinction between the two, but I do want to point out that this prevents both accidental writes, like the general accidentally moving the battle plans from the top secret folder into the lower security folder, but it also prevents malicious writes. So if you have a general that's perhaps on the payroll of an enemy and is trying to leak information intentionally, this rule prevents that general from doing that. Now, the star property has a weird name. It's not actually spelled the star property, it's spelled like this. And there's a cool story behind that. In his interview with Jeffrey Yost, David Bell describes how he and Leonard Bell-LaPadula came up with the name star property. I didn't have a good name for it, so I just put up an asterisk dash property. At some point we said, if we don't change the name of this now, we're going to be stuck with it. But we couldn't think of a good name for it, so we left it. The final property of the basic security theorem is the discretionary security property. Bell described this as like choosing what you want to do with your life. It's your discretion. If you choose to spend your life playing World of Warcraft and making stupid security videos on YouTube, you are also choosing to give up making meaningful human connections in your life. So back in the context of classified information, you might have top secret access, but if you choose to work in engineering, you don't need access to the top secret files that are in finance. These are in between security levels. These boundaries are built by choice, hence discretion. So to bring it all together here, you have the basic security theorem, and this theorem consists of three properties. You have the simple security property, the star property, and the discretionary security property. So one, if you can describe your system as a state machine, and then two, show that all three of these properties hold for every state your system could find itself in, you can confidently say that your system is secure. Secure. There's a lot of quotation marks there. I don't want you to confuse that with like that meaning your system is secure in real life. There are all kinds of limitations to this model, but it does get everyone on the same page about describing what security means. We're no longer talking from a negative of saying like, this is not secure, this is not secure, this is vulnerable to this is vulnerable to that. We're also on the same page about how we can show or demonstrate that a system is secure if you can find the right definition of secure. Remember what we said up top, every model is wrong, but that does not necessarily mean every model is useless. Anyway, that's all I got here. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.